I think when I played for Deftly, we both tried to mask each other's flaws a lot because we were just so close and that we were getting used to each other. So there were times when like he was too indecisive and no one ever really like brought him out of that because I would try to be decisive for him. And it was because we were just like so close, we didn't want either to like, we just naturally built up working around the other. And I think that was actually gating our ability to get better. Like once Deftly joined a new team, got like the new habits from playing with Matt instead, he got so much better almost instantly. And I felt like once I went on to play with Keith, I also had to realize like, oh, maybe I'm not as good at what I thought I was good at.
This is Azento from Esports Heaven, and I have here with me Zeyzal from Cloud9. And you just won this super narrow game against Echo Fox. You had a really rough early game in the bot lane, but you guys decided to draft Quinn. Now, what makes Quinn such a special champion in the meta right now?
So when drafting Quinn, the unique part of the champion is that you allow for your top laner to pretty much play any matchup because they can't play the risky picks like Kennen, Gnar, things like that. That's like part of it, but that's not the main point. Like Quinn itself seems pretty strong right now, and its laning, it's not the best for poke, so it can be poked out, but it has super good all-in should you get the opportunity to all-in, and it's just super mobile around the map, which makes playing side lane much easier.
Okay, so the early game was rough, and I can only imagine the comms of just what you guys need to do in order to come back. So how were the comms going as far as the early game was concerned?
With a rough early game like this, we usually in comms you feel a lot more behind than you were, but Jensen and Blabber were like, they kept reiterating like, we're not that weak, we're still able to contest vision, but not everyone felt the same way, obviously, because like I was behind, I was down 2 levels mid-game, and
yeah.
Sneaky was also down a bit, but Sneaky usually never is like, yeah, we're too far behind. He's always looking for a way to get back into it, and I'm like, I think we should just trade sides now. We gave up the Rift, we gave up our top outer and the Rift for a bot outer, and then we backed, we held, and then like we focused more on trading than on playing directly into them. But with our champions, we could have held vision and probably could have contested the Rift, even though it was like 8-1 when they got Rift.
Mm-hmm.
So I'd say comms were mostly oriented around like everyone presenting ideas, and then in the end we traded because we felt behind, or most of us felt behind other than our top 3, but at the time Aatrox was bot side too.
Yeah, so with the comms and with Smoothie kind of leaving the entire team, and you've been on the roster for a bit now, but I assume that Smoothie kind of had some input with the team too, regardless of if he was playing in Academy or not. But Smoothie has been known to be this vocal player, right? And he said in his tweet longer that he was like the shot caller for the team, but he also didn't have a great grasp on the meta. And so when that happened, he just didn't know how to call for the team. So how is the shot calling situation going now for Cloud9? Is it pretty democratic?
So before it was Smoothie, it was definitely oriented more around playing around bottom lane and his leads. So if he wasn't able to break their bottom or able to get a lead, the game would kind of stall, and that's to no fault of his. That's a same problem that TL kind of has, where they're a very bot lane centric team, and in certain metas it's better to be able to play top side. So right now, because we are, to answer your question, a more democratic team, with like, my job within the team is to kind of process the information that people are giving me, and then I present the idea, or if I'm confident, I'll present the call. So Eric's like, oh, we can dive top in 2 waves, and then I hear Jensen's like, oh, I'm at risk for a gank, and then I'm like, oh, you should definitely just hug top side Blabber, get vision down and protect them, or look for the dive if you can. Mm-hmm. And right now I think that's a bit of an advantage because we're playing a lot around Eric, or Licorice.
Yeah.
And he's getting us a lot of our leads through his super strong laning.
Well, so aren't you in fear of maybe getting what I would like to call like the high syndrome, in that if you're too vocal, then suddenly you're kind of taking over the comms for the team, and then your entire team is too reliant upon you. And so it's naturally going to be probably bot centric as a team because they're relying on your calls, right? So are you ever in fear that will happen with you?
I think I'm a bit different in the way that I call because it's not centric around me. I try to be objective, and I'm willing to call away from myself as well. Even when I'm not behind or I'm even, I'm still willing to call away from myself, and I try to focus more on what others tell me to do. And it's not that I'm not the one making the calls. I'm the one forming a plan and making sure we're on the same page most of the time. A lot of the calls come from varying people. Like Blabber makes calls, Eric definitely makes calls, Jinsen always is vocal about his mid lane state and things like that. So I think it just opened up more of an opposite effect where everyone's making plans. It's just that when there's a lot of plans, someone has to like clear the comms, be like, yeah, we need to decide on one plan, and that's what we did today.
Yeah, that's always nice to have like a team that's on the same page, at least when it comes to a call. But let's switch tones because I want to talk about when you first got into professional League of Legends. There's always a player that someone looks up to when they first start, like when they're trying to be on the path to pro. So who was your player that you were just like, oh, I really respect this player. He's really good, and I like his play style.
So when I first started playing professionally, I would assume that means the first time I got on a team, and the first team I got on was Cloud9 Challenger, so naturally it was like the player one step above me was Lemon, even though I think Smoothie and Bunny were playing for the spot at that time, but I didn't interact with them much, so I only interacted with Lemon, and in scrims I would just like, we would just win everything against the weaker teams, but then I'd go against like All-Tech Lemon, and they just like bop us in any lane. Like, we'd be like, yeah, we picked a winning lane in draft, but we lost. So it became a legend. Like Lemon Nation Braum, he'd always find a way to kill you level 1. He'd just like be in the most random places level 1, and that's kind of a thing you see now with jungle starting so early. You have like Braum on your team, you like Fnatic push them, you wrap around top. Things like that. That's what like Lemon did, and I kind of tried to copy that because he was the best player I was playing against at the time. And at the time, I still felt he was a strong, like he knew how to play his lane when he picked it. Or he knew how to play his champions in lane especially.
So I guess you kind of respected his analytical mind too, because Lemon he's always been known as like this guy that has a game plan for, what he's going to do, but he was criticized for his mechanics, which, whether that's right or wrong, people still criticize him for that. So would you say that you want to develop a play style that's more analytical instead of relying on your mechanics?
I wouldn't say that. It's more just like at the time, Lemon was just such a tier above me that I couldn't really comprehend his flaws because he would just abuse our bot lane and how weak we were relative to him at the time. It's just more, at the beginning, I tried to emulate a lot of his plays, regardless of his mechanics, and I didn't really consider why he was doing it. I was just like, oh, that works. I want to do that now. So I wouldn't say I'm trying to emulate his strategy, or I try to, but I think throughout this last split, especially last split on Cloud9 Academy, I tried to emulate a lot of what Smoothie did, and I think I also tried to emulate a lot of what Ming did as well, things like that. Okay. So, like his Alistar would there was one play in Academy I remember where just that week there was a clip of RNG's support flash queuing a Callista prediction flash, and that week I was playing Echo Fox in Echo Fox Academy.
Yeah.
I did the same exact thing to the Demonte Azir, and I was like, yeah, I did it. So Gangster. It's kind of like I just try to emulate the players that went in for the engages and looked really good on them, but it's not really translating at the time because I've mostly been playing like Braum and things like that. Rakan I played, but I didn't translate that directly across from scrims to stage.
Well, I mean, your pike's looking pretty good, so you got that going for you.
Wasn't too bad this game. My early game was rough, but mid game is always nice on pike.
So I want to talk about the difference between playing with someone like Sneaky, who's this incredible veteran and really consistent, versus your old AD carry of Deftly. Like how is their styles different, and what contrast on how you need to take into account how to change your play style accordingly?
I think when I played for Deftly, we both tried to mask each other's flaws a lot because we were just so close and that we were getting used to each other. So there were times when like he was too indecisive and no one ever really like brought him out of that because I would try to be decisive for him. And it was because we were just like so close, we didn't want either to, like, we just naturally built up working around the other. And I think that was actually gating our ability to get better. Like once Deftly joined a new team, got like the new habits from playing with Matt instead, he got so much better almost instantly. And I felt like once I went on to play with Keith, I also had to realize like, oh, maybe I'm not as good at what I thought I was good at, because Keith also had a lot of information from playing with Gate, also knew how to play lane. So like there were times when I was like, oh, I'm the reason we're losing this lane. And I was with Deftly for so long that it was hard to see. But now I go to Sneaky, and it's like Sneaky had the same thing a bit, where I think Smoothie would mask his flaws a lot because they played with each other for so long.
Yeah, a really long time.
Yeah, and I think I naturally try to cover those that I noticed, like habits from when Sneaky played and Smoothie played with him. So now I think the main difference is I'm trying less to have my own flaws masked and trying to like analyze the difference between playing with each AD carry and trying to find my own problems and trying to work less on fixing theirs and trying to work less on covering theirs and more on fixing them.
So what's your opinion on staying together as a bot lane when transferring teams? I know this is kind of early in your career and whatnot, but some ADCs and some supports have gone, to other teams together, like Altec and Adrian, or Sven and Mithy. So, like, what's your opinion on keeping synergy from team to team?
I think it's good for initial results, and I think as long as the players are willing to work with each other, that every time you switch to an equally or better counterpart, I guess, AD carry or support, then you will also get better because you're learning to play around their habits, their mistakes, their strengths.
Yeah.
And it opens you up to a new play style. So I think while it might be comforting to have someone is good, you can trust, it's also good to be willing to like go out there and find someone new and play with a new player, and maybe then you can see some of your strengths and weaknesses more clearly.
Okay, well, that's all I really have for you. This has been Azento from Esports Heaven and Zeyzal from Cloud9. Thank you for the interview.
Thank you.
I assume if you made it this far, you probably enjoyed the content. So if you did, subscribe, and also check out my other content that's more analytical and opinionated. But otherwise, keep it locked at esportsheaven.com, and I'll see you next time. Peace.